President and Board of Trustees, roll call, please.
Trustee O'Rourke.
Here.
Trustee Peck.
Here.
Trustee Rassich.
Here.
Trustee Wojciechowski. Trustee Benucci.
Here.
Trustee Lamb.
Here.
Mayor Collins.
Here, if we could all rise for the pledge.
Presidential comments.
I just have two. The first one is Memorial Day remembrance was held here at the Village Hall, and it went over quite good. There was a couple hundred people in attendance. Sorry that the intercom didn't work. It was theirs, though, not ours. But it's always good to see everyone still remembering and putting hot dogs and that on the back burner. The other thing I have is I want to congratulate, and I think I'll turn it over to the chief, but the Supervisor of the Year and 3 life savings and the Civilian of the Year. And Chief, would you like to take over?
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we would like to present the officers that were awarded some of our annual awards and also some prestigious awards from our awards ceremony that we conducted in early May. If I could have Sergeant Mike Fisher, Officer Mike Dornbosch, Officer Lucas Straco, and Sergeant Zach Zichterman up here, please. And as you're aware, every year we do have an annual awards ceremony where we award commendations to officers or civilian personnel that do something well within the previous year. Some of the largest awards we have are our Officer, Civilian, and Supervisor of the Year awards. And then we also have some higher ranking awards, if you will. Some awards we've never awarded, such as Medal of Valor and Medal of Honor, things like that, for reasons that thankfully we haven't had instances that warranted those type of events. But one of our highest profile awards, aside from the Officer or Civilian of the Year in that, is our life-saving awards. And this past year, we actually had 3 officers that were awarded life-saving awards. And I'll just read real quickly what they did to achieve those life-saving awards. First of all, Officer Mike Dornbosch. On Sunday, September 13th, Officer Dornbosch responded to West Partridge Drive in Plainfield for an unresponsive male subject who had possibly overdosed. Upon Officer Dornbosch's arrival, he observed a male subject lying on the floor of the garage who was not breathing. Officer Dornbosch immediately began cardiopulmonary resuscitation, awaiting the response of the Plainfield paramedics. Fire department personnel arrived and performed other life-saving measures. A short time later, the subject appeared to breathe and gain consciousness. As a result of Officer Dornbosch's quick and decisive actions, the subject made a full recovery and survived. We also have Sergeant Zach Zigerman, Jeremiah Zigerman, who also received the life-saving award. On March 11th, Sergeant Zigerman responded to Ike Sports, which is on 143rd Street here in Plainfield, for an unresponsive male subject. Upon Sergeant Zigerman's arrival, he observed a male subject lying on the floor with several people around him. Sergeant Zigerman immediately checked for a pulse and was unable to locate a pulse. As fire department personnel began to arrive and prepare for other life-saving measures, Sergeant Zigerman began cardiopulmonary resuscitation. A short time later, the subject gasped for air. At the advice of medical personnel on the scene, Sergeant Zichterman continued chest compressions until the paramedics attached the defibrillator. The paramedics shocked the subject, who regained consciousness shortly afterwards. As a result of Sergeant Zichterman's quick and decisive actions, the subject made a full recovery and survived. And we also have Officer Lucas Straco. On April 12th, Officer Straco responded to South Arbor Drive in Plainfield for an unresponsive male subject who had possibly overdosed on prescription medication. Upon Officer Straco's arrival, he observed a male subject lying on the floor who was not breathing. Believing that the subject overdosed on Oxycontin, an opioid, Officer Straco quickly prepared a Narcan nasal injection and administered it to the subject. Officer Straco then began cardiopulmonary resuscitation, awaiting the response of the Plainfield paramedics. A short time later, the subject began to breathe, and fire department personnel arrived and performed other life-saving measures. While inside the ambulance, the subject appeared to regain consciousness and speak to the paramedics. As a result of Officer Straco's quick and decisive actions, the subject made a full recovery and survived. And just to add to that, that was our first deployment of Narcan, the medication that combats the opioid overdoses. So our first deployment, and it was a successful one. So those are the 3 officers. I'd like to congratulate them again on the life-saving awards they achieved in this past year. We were also awarded Civilian of the Year award, which went to Vanessa Hutchins, who finished off her career as she retired shortly after that. So Vanessa Hutchins was our Civilian of the Year for 2015, and Sergeant Mike Fisher was our Supervisor of the Year for 2015. And I'll just read a little biography of Mike Fisher since he's been with our department. He was hired as a police officer with the Village of Plainfield on June 27, 1994. During his 22 years of service with the village, Sergeant Fisher has worked in several different capacities. Although most of his supervisory tenure has been spent as a patrol sergeant, Sergeant Fisher has also been assigned as a sergeant overseeing the school resource officers and DARE officers. Currently, Sergeant Fisher has several collateral responsibilities within the police department, which include public information officer, juvenile officer, and evidence technician. Sergeant Fisher has also been the police department's range master and possesses an exuberant amount of knowledge pertaining to firearms. He also spent several years as a gang resistance education and training instructor for the police department. During his career, Sergeant Fisher received several department awards, including a life-saving award in 2005. He's also received several letters of recommendation for his level of work he has performed, a few of which were handwritten letters of appreciation from different citizens. In 2015, Sergeant Fisher was assigned as a day shift patrol sergeant. During that year, Sergeant Fisher responded to several critical incidents and took immediate control of the scene and made several instant and effective decisions which resulted in favorable outcomes. A few of the most notable incidents were the suicidal subject with a firearm across the street from Plainfield Central High School and an armed robbery assignment on South Route 59. Sergeant Fisher is described by his peers as a very knowledgeable and professional officer who always leads by example. Sergeant Fisher is a very productive and dedicated officer who oftentimes is the first person to fill a vacancy with little or no notice. His efforts have resulted in the issuance of numerous citations and arrests. Sergeant Fisher has a reputation for sound judgment and decision-making skills and is often called upon to be the acting patrol commander. So I'd like to congratulate Sergeant Mike Fisher as our Supervisor of the Year for 2015. So Village Board, Mayor, I'd like to present our life-saving awards and our Supervisor of the Year awards for 2015.
If you could have all the officers come by, please.
Congratulations.
Trustee comments?
A comment. 72 years ago today, my grandma's second husband, who I call Grandpa John, landed with approximately 156,000 other Allied troops on Omaha Beach. Joining him were other Allied troops from Canada and several other Allied countries on Utah, Gold, Sword, and Juno Beach. And they put their lives in danger to fight socialism in Germany, fascism in Italy, and they were hoping to fight communism in Russia, but we ended up ending the war before that happened. I do want to thank every veteran that has served. In addition, I believe there are 2 veterans on the village board here with us tonight, Mayor Mike Collins and Trustee Bill Lamb. If I'm missing one, please let me know. I do have a little souvenir for both. I actually have sand from Omaha Beach in Normandy to give to you. So I'll pass that down. Thank you. And my grandpa John Akari that served, he actually joined when he was underage and lied just to get in because he wanted to serve and go fight. I'll never forget him. He was very special to me. If there's any members of staff or the public that are also veterans, there's a public comment section. If you let me know you served, I have a few more of these in my bag, and you're welcome to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee.
Thank you, Bill.
Just comment on the life-saving thing. It's very impressive. 3 people's lives were saved because of police in their training. One of the things I was going to comment later on is PEMA training. It's over 40% of the hours is actually in training. And to have your police force, no matter who responds, capable of handling those things is very impressive. You do a heck of a lot of training. Great, and really appreciate that. So.
Just to carry on, just for one quick second, having that officer administer that Narcan, Will County seems to have a epidemic, if you will, at least according to the paper and the coroner's office, about these overdoses of heroin and prescription drugs. So kudos to the staff for the instruction on administering this drug, and it will save, but I just hope they don't have to use it a lot more. So
That's correct. Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment. Obviously, we congratulate our police. You do a great job, and we appreciate all that you do. But I want to put a special shout out for Vanessa Hutchins. She's one of those people that works in the background in every organization there is, and they work very hard. And without the services someone like her provides to support the department and the organization, a lot of things would not happen. So even though Vanessa's not here to hear this, I know she has friends that'll still hear this and send it to her. She is just a marvelous person. Her husband's wonderful. And I just want to thank her and congratulate her and wish her the best in her retirement. Thank you.
I'd like to add a point to Trustee Peck's very poignant remarks in regard to veterans and D-Day. 70, obviously, as he had mentioned, it was 72 years ago today, June the 6th. I was reflecting on the entire incident or the event of the D-Day invasion at Normandy over that Memorial Day celebration. I was probably crawling around on the kitchen floor when two of my older brothers, who were in the 101st Screaming Eagles, jumped at Normandy that night. And Petar and Vladimir were their names, and always the remarks that they made about that. And I think about the individuals who sacrifice so much, every veteran who has sacrificed so much for this country. When we had our Memorial Day celebration out here, you could almost get tears in your eyes thinking about what men and women have given to having us have the ability to sit here tonight and have a free and democratic meeting. It is totally unbelievable that we could possibly do it. So many countries are quelched. They do not have the opportunity to speak out. We don't, and I think you have to, every time you meet a veteran, you talk to a veteran, male, female, whoever served in the service. They don't have to be in combat. Simply say, thank you. I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
I have a couple of comments. I just want to say I think it's great for the police tonight to be able to show that we share the successes, because I think sometimes organizations forget to do that. I was fortunate enough to attend the actual ceremony and was actually able to spend the time with the ride-along. So everything that I've seen and witnessed with you guys is very professional and displayed courtesy, at least when I was out with you guys. So keep up the good work, and thanks for everything you guys do. On a second note, I guess it was more on a follow-up to some of my earlier stuff, so it probably goes back to Administrator Murphy. We had talked about in the past about when we approved the budget, we have a different amount of policies for different ways we track the funds, the way we invest our funds, but we didn't really have anything about disposition of assets. And I think at that point you said you would kind of check into it and get back to us at some point. And I don't think we've gotten any response back.
It's still in process of being assembled for the board to consider.
And then the second piece, also as a follow-up, was I think at one point you were going to try to provide the location on the website where the auctions are listed. So when we do go to auction, that the residents have an opportunity to be able to attend, to vote on the local vehicle, or
Yeah, those
bid
are
on those
those are
auctions.
posted on the website. They're in two different categories. One's it links to the same site, but we've put it in two different places. One is in the police department and one's in public works, since those are the two largest areas where we have assets that go through and people are genuinely looking for vehicles. They're either police or public works vehicles. So the link is made available on both of those pages.
Now, is it linked there all the time, or is it just when we have assets going?
It's permanently linked, but
Okay.
then we'll put a message out as well through our social media and other sources when we actually have a vehicle that goes through it. We left it up as a permanent link because there are other departments that do make themselves available of this program through Mannheim. As well, it is Mannheim is a national auction company, and they've got a number of other places, so we thought that it made sense to leave it up as a permanent link.
Thank
Does that answer your questions?
you. Yes.
Any other trustee comments? Okay, public comments? Step up to the microphone. State your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Callie Larson of 15105 Freedom Way. I've been a resident of Plainfield for about 16 years, my husband of 30, and I have just a few comments, questions for this evening after looking over the agenda. One of my items was actually in regards to Trustee O'Rourke's comments dating back to August of 2015 about the vehicle auction postings. I had a friend through our church inquire if we had known anybody that had a van or something out there, and I said, I think there's something through the Plainfield Village. I went online. The link does not post any vehicles whatsoever. It directs you strictly to Mannheim to create a user ID and log in. You can't search Plainfield Village, anything that's been submitted by the village. There's no posting of the vehicles that have been released. It strictly directs you to Mannheim and asks you to log in to search.
There are two different ways you can do a search. One is to be a registered user, which you would do that, but as well you can do a public search, and our vehicles will be listed on the public search.
Okay. Thank you. And then additionally, with tonight on the docket, there's $134,000 requested in spending through the police department. And last meeting, dating back to April 18th, Resolution number 1723 authorized the execution of an intergovernmental agreement with Will County for a warrant pickup program unanimously passed, costing $13,000 of unbudgeted expenses. While advised the budget would be monitored, Mayor Collins and Trustee Wojciechowski inquired regarding the use of the van that had been acquired through forfeiture. The village paid to wrap it, buy equipment for it, and had installed the equipment, but currently at that time it was not in use, and no answer provided by Kevin Greco, I believe, could be provided as to what we were doing with that vehicle. My question would be, what's the use of that vehicle now that we've entered into an agreement with Will County for $13,000 a year? Do we have plans on using that vehicle, selling that vehicle, and offsetting some of this $134,000 that we're looking at purchasing new sedans? We purchased new sedans, 2015 models in 2014. We're looking at purchasing new sedans as well this year. Absolutely understand there's always the need for new equipment if we have the budget. Obviously, police force comes first, in my opinion, making sure we have law enforcement officials on the street, but I think we need to review the ROI on it, if we're getting back our investment, or if we have dollars sitting. So that would be something I would question, perhaps could be addressed later in the meeting. And then as well as the motorcycles. I believe on April, there was a request to have a 2-month lease for 2 motorcycles. We currently have 3 motorcycles in use. So the request this evening for the 1-year lease agreement for $7,300, is that for the same 2 motorcycles, or are we acquiring additional motorcycles? And are we only using 2 on the street, or are we utilizing all 3 that we have available? And the last item, and I do apologize for the length, I was a bit disturbed in January 2015 when I came across the findings. At first I wasn't disturbed. There was a lovely article in the Patch that had notated that Shop with a Cop had gone on in Plainfield, and that $11,000 had come from organizations like the school district, PJWC, and I believe it said donors, private donors. I looked through village board meeting minutes and had discovered that $9,500 of that $11,000 was voted on by the village board. So I went back to 2014 meeting minutes to see if this is something we commonly do by using the village board to write a check for this, or if this is done through fundraising efforts. Nothing was available in 2014 to mention it, so I'm curious to know, do we use fundraising efforts throughout the community to fund Shop with a Cop, like other cities, like the city of Joliet does through their police department efforts, to fund that program, or does the village board pay that check every year?
I can speak to the last one rather quickly. The board has to act on it because the monies, while they are donated funds that come into the village, since they are village, they are funds that come into the village, and if it's over $5,000, we don't have the spending authority as administration to do it without a blessing of the village board. So we bring that item then to the village board for consideration, and the board votes on that that matter. So, if it's
Those are funds that come in through the village, how?
those are donated funds through private groups, and it comes on into the village.
And that's each year?
Yes, ma'am.
And a clarification, Brian, that would mean we're simply a pass-through for those funds, correct?
Cor-
Versus using taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, there aren't
that
any
we would-
taxpayer dollars used for that.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that. That's all I had, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we move on to the business meeting. Need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Trustee O'Rourke,
Yes.
Trustee Peck,
Yes.
Trustee Rassich,
Yes.
Trustee Benucci,
Yes.
Trustee Lamb.
Yes.
Passes. Our first item of business, and forgive me a second only because I'm not nearly as fast as our clerk. The consent agenda, motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes minutes of the board meeting held on May 16th, 2016, bills paid and bills payable reports for June 6, 2016, authorizing release of travelers bond numbers 106312658 and 106312660, issued on behalf of G&H Developers Corporation for completion of public improvements at Meyer Lots 2 and 9. And finally, ordinance number 3268, increasing the Class D liquor licenses to 6 for Broken Yoke located at 12618 South Route 59, and decreasing the Class C1 liquor licenses to reflect the closing of the Wallen Mini Mart located at 14221 South Wallen Drive, Unit A14.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Trustee O'Rourke, Trustee Peck,
Yes.
Trustee Rassich,
Yes.
Trustee Benucci,
Yes.
Trustee Lamb.
Yes.
Passes. Next item for consideration is Circle K Gas Station Convenience Store. Seeking board consideration of a motion to adopt ordinance number 3269, granting approval of a special use for proposed drive-through operation for a car wash accessory and a gas station and convenience store at the southeast corner of 143rd Street and Wallen Drive.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Trustee O'Rourke, Trustee Peck,
Yes.
Trustee Rassich,
Yes.
Trustee Benucci,
Yes.
Trustee Lamb.
Yes.
Approved. No administrators report, management services report.
I have one item under my report for consideration, but I'll defer to our IT director, Rick Kazanko, to explain the details of the request.
Good evening. Tonight, I'm seeking board consideration of a motion to authorize the purchase of a EMC Unity 300 hybrid drive-away from CDWG for the amount of $23,042.67. Just to give you a quick overview of what this is, over the years, the village has purchased several hard drive arrays as our needs have grown. We currently have 4 in production right now. This is an effort to consolidate those and give us room to grow and to look forward towards future growth for our network storage, both for files and for virtual machines. I know you've seen some items come up for virtual machines in the past, so this will just augment our current storage. Initially, after purchase, it'll give us double the capacity we have now with room for future growth. So I'm open to taking any questions.
One question, Rick. I noticed we're buying the smallest unit that they have, the Unity 300. There's a 400, a 500, and a 600. What's the difference in cost if we went up one more?
They are significantly more expensive. However, this unit we're filling right now, it's a 25 drive capacity. We're only buying 16 right now, so we've got the additional 9, and we can add on more drive capacity to the 300 unit. So we're not limited in any foreseeable future.
Okay, that's an important thing. As long as it's economically attractive to go a little bit larger, but if it's not, then
No,
this
they're-
meets our needs, and for the foreseeable future is fine with me.
Yeah,
so.
they're significantly more expensive.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any?
A real quick question. I believe Dell absorbed EMC, correct? Or not?
Not.
Not?
No.
did they split? I believe they had a partnership at
They
some
had a
point.
partnership, and I believe EMC is a separate company. EMC used to be also VMware,
Okay,
so,
Working on it.
yeah.
thank you. That's all.
So we're seeking board consideration of a motion to authorize the purchase of an EMC Unit 300 hybrid drive array from CDWG for the amount of $23,042.67.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Trustee O'Rourke,
Yes.
Trustee Peck,
Yes.
Trustee Rassich,
Yes.
Trustee Benucci,
Yes.
Trustee Lamb.
Yes.
Approved. Engineers report.
No report this evening?
Planning Department. Building Department. Public Works report.
Yes, thank you. I just have a few things, housekeeping items more than anything else. As per our budget discussions, 127th Street reconstruction is a very important project to the board and to the public here too as well. We're very pleased that IDOT just this last week gave final approval for the plans. So we're actually ready to bid this project. We just have a few things that need to be taken care of. Here's the project location shown on the map. There's a $2 million grant that's included with this project. And the only remaining things left are the three things that are here on the agenda this evening. One is related to the project funding resolution. The second is a wetland banking contribution that's required by federal and state law. And the third is an engineering services agreement for the construction inspection. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. We've gone through these things before as part of the budget process, and we're excited. We want to get this out to bid. It's set to be bid in July if these items are approved tonight, and construction will be underway after that.
We need to vote on them separately?
Yes, we need to vote on those separately, yes.
Okay.
So I'm seeking board consideration of a motion to adopt the funding agreement and related resolution number 1724 and authorize the village president to sign the agreement for the 127th Street reconstruction project. Need a motion and a second?
So move.
Second?
I'm sorry, just for clarity, I want to apologize. So it says the federal amount is 2 million, and the local share is 1.97, but the 1.97 is part of the $2 million grant. Is that
The 1.9 million is above and beyond that, but there again, we will competitively bid this project. We anticipate that it will come in lower than that, but the resolution amount has to be higher than the bid. So it's one of those things where I have to bring the resolution forward to secure the federal funds, but you will see that when the bids come in, and we can talk about the bids when they come in, we anticipate that they'll be lower, hopefully significantly lower than the total of the two numbers.
what is our estimated share after the grant money?
Is approximately $1.9 million.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll go forward with the roll call. Trustee O'Rourke,
Yes.
Trustee Peck,
Yes.
Trustee Rassich,
Yes.
Trustee Benucci,
Yes.
Trustee Lamb.
Yes.
Approved. Moving along, I need a motion and a second to approve the wetland bank agreement and authorize the village president to sign the agreement and process payment to the Land and Water Resources, Inc. in the amount of $16,560 for the 127th Street reconstruction project.
Second?
Any questions? Trustee O'Rourke, Trustee Peck,
Yes.
Trustee Rassich,
Yes.
Trustee Benucci,
Yes.
Trustee Lamb.
Yes.
Approved. And then finally for that one, I need a motion and a second to approve the professional services agreement with Baxter and Woodman for the Phase 3 construction oversight agreement in the amount of $389,182 and authorize the village president to sign the agreement for the 127th Street reconstruction project.
So moved.
A motion and a second. Trustee O'Rourke,
Yes.
Trustee Peck,
Yes.
Trustee Rassich,
Yes.
Trustee Benucci,
Yes.
Trustee Lamb.
Yes.
That is approved. And then lastly, Alan, I need this last one too, don't
And the
I?
last one is actually 3 items that we've tied together in the same potential motion here too as well. As the board is well aware, Staff works diligently, and Mr. Jessen is behind me here. Works diligently on finding grant funds and opportunities for the community. The mayor and Administrator Murphy were in Washington to talk about federal funds here not long ago for a large project too as well, but we still focus on other projects. When we looked at the ITEP applications potentials out there, we try and match the best projects that could potentially have funding through these sources. Now, these sources, just to give you an idea, are typically reserved for things that improve pedestrian walkability. So sidewalks, bike paths, street lightings and sidewalks combined. The last ITEP grant that we had received was actually related to the decorative lighting along Route 59 as part of the reconstruction of Route 59, and we were fortunate to have that too as well. So we have 3 applications before you. They're actually the resolutions that'll be attached to the applications, and they include 3 different locations. I'll go over the locations here. This is Lockport Street, basically between Route 59 to the east 2 miles. The sidewalk is an older sidewalk. In areas has some challenges as far as ADA requirements are concerned. Could be wider. This application also includes the decorative street lighting that we see on Lockport Street in the downtown area, on sections of Des Plaines Street and Illinois Street too as well, to be incorporated into the historic district. We felt like this was a good match for the potential grant and would be a great program if we could get some federal funding. Now, this project is an 80-20, so if it's approved, the feds pay 80%, we pay 20%. There's a little exception on this one because there's a little reduction in the amount that's paid for street lighting. But still in all, we see this as a great opportunity for over $1 million worth of grant money for that particular project. The second project that we'd like to submit a grant application for, not too far outside of this building here. There is a gap between Wallen and Meadow as far as the walkways are concerned. We believe that this would provide a good interconnection to our downtown and would be a nice candidate for a grant application. And third, last but not least, this is an item that has come up through the strategic planning process now, and even before when we went out and talked to the public. This is a challenging area, Main Street, Route 126, to get to and from Lockport Street and out to Route 59. You can see the blue is where we currently have sidewalks. The red is where there are no sidewalks or the sidewalks are deficient in some way. So this application would be for this section. Ideally, we would love to get approval for all 3. That may not be realistic, but any one of these 3 projects we believe would be a great enhancement to the village. And anytime you can achieve 80% federal funding for a project, it's a good project within the village of Plainfield. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, but we did put it all within the same resolution. And after this, we'll continue to investigate and look for grant funding for other projects too as well.
Any of those 3 projects have a sidewalk that goes into a gap? Or it's not, they're all going to be continuous now? We're not creating any new gaps or even some?
Yeah, closing gaps, improving, coming out to compliance with ADA standards, providing lighting. So we're not creating any new gaps with this. This is actually filling in the gaps.
Thank you. That's my only concern. I'll make sure that we don't got enough of those. We don't need any more.
That's correct. Yes.
What is the premise behind the grant? In other words, does it have to be specifically for sidewalks or what?
It has to be pedestrian accommodations or items that basically reduce vehicles on the roadway. So you could theoretically argue mass transit and things like that could qualify for an ITEP grant as far as it's improving bus service or rail service or things like that. But in our category, under our jurisdiction, it would be mainly pedestrian accommodations, not vehicle accommodations.
So would a pedestrian crossing qualify?
Yes.
Total number we're looking, is that just, there's a chart in here, is that the 844,000, is that just for one or is that for all 3?
Each resolution has a different amount. And so for resolution number 1, there's a breakdown, and I apologize for the page numbers, but it's the 4th page in, and it is, the project is Lockport Street, You'll see the different amounts that are listed there between the federal and local participation. And then page number 2, 3, towards the back, you'll see a breakdown, page number 2, for the different components, the village's component and the federal component. And then towards the end of the document, I believe it's page number 3 in that section, another breakdown. So to answer your question, they are 3 separate projects. I'm a pretty optimistic person, but it wouldn't be, since this is highly competitive and several other communities are competing for these funds, we won't most likely get all 3.
Even after federal participation, we're over $1 million for new sidewalks, right?
Well, if we're looking at the Lockport Street, it's not only the reconstruction of the 2 sidewalks, but the ADA compliance, that would be the curb returns that would be needed for each one of the intersections, plus the street lighting as well for a significant section. So the street lighting is at least half of that cost.
I'll just go ahead and express my feeling. My feeling is you know, again, it comes back to congestion, and I would agree to spending money to try to get cars off the road and pedestrians, but a number of these already have sidewalks, maybe not the connections we're looking to do, but at least across the street, so there is an option for some pedestrians in that point. Most of it is focused, again, I think near Central, and we even had a conversation with our last one at 135th that there weren't a lot of pedestrian crossings up north, but yet all these continue to be Central or South, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Are there any other trustee comments? If not, I need a motion and a second.
We approve the 3 separate resolutions required by IDOT.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for board consideration to adopt 3 resolutions, number 1725, 1726, and 1727, for the 2016 ITEP application process, and authorize the village president to sign the local assurance form as required by IDOT. Trustee O'Rourke?
No.
Trustee Peck? Trustee Rassich?
Yes.
Trustee Benucci?
Yes.
Trustee Lamb?
Yes.
That
Thank you.
passes.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Excuse me, Mr. Murphy, before we move on, I'd like to make just a general comment about the Public Works report. Recently, someone said to me, why do you compliment people who are doing their job? And I thought that was horribly solicitous, but needless to say, you know, I look at situation, I look at this Public Works report, and I read carefully over it, and we have Ellen Person, Director of Public Works, Randall Jessen, Superintendent of Public Improvements. We have Brian Murphy, Village Administrator, Tracy Pleckham, Head of our Finances, et cetera, et cetera. We can go down the list of everyone. You look at all of the work that's done in this particular fashion, and you see it summarized so carefully and so clearly for us, and other people, names I haven't mentioned, who are involved in this. And when you do say thank you for your hard work, all of your work, and putting something together that's so comprehensive and so understandable, it is really appreciated, and oftentimes the public can't respond to you, but when the work is finished and the dust is settled, it is generally a heartfelt thank you from everyone. And like I just want to say thank you for your hard work, and keep doing it. You're not getting a pay raise.
Please.
A point of closure on our last agenda item, for the upcoming year's ITEP grants, would it be possible for us to, as a board, to also go over if there's other options, maybe up north, to consider, to present to Alan, or have Alan present to us, however we want to do it, to see if there's any suggestions from any of the trustees of
Actually, to that matter, we do have, you will be getting future bids from Public Works. These are just grant applications. These aren't the only places where we will be doing gap closures and other pathway improvements. We do have a budgeted line item just for pathways. As you know, after the 2013 strategic planning process, we have been spending a lot of money on closing those gaps. We started on Van Dyke Road to do the north-south connections on Van Dyke. We've done a number of east-west improvements. There have been some up north. We also are looking at doing some on the south side of town as well. We try to go more along the lines of low-hanging fruit so that we can get the best return on the investment, to coin a phrase that was used earlier tonight, to make sure that those gaps that we close are actually ones that will get well used. And we continue to make progress on that. So you will be seeing something that comes forward to the village board. Those bids, I don't think are out currently, are they, Mr. Persons?
No, we're still assembling the information.
You also will be seeing the bid documents as well for 127th Street. We also have the MFT work to be done on 135th Street and the like. So there will be a number of different public improvement documents that will be coming forward to the board.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, the village has been particularly successful in getting grants. And I have to defer to your expertise in what appeals to the people who give the grants out. And I think those are the projects that you're picking. It's not that we're not doing other things, but you're picking ones where we have a chance to get some extra money, which allows us to spread our other funds as other places. So I think the experience has paid off. We have an excellent track record of getting grants, and please continue doing so.
Police Chief's report.
Thank you. The first item I have on the agenda is seeking board's consideration to authorize the purchase of 3 Ford utility police interceptors from Rod Baker Ford in the amount of $85,389. Included in your packet, or should have been included in your packet, is a photograph, and I'm not sure if it's on the PowerPoint or not, of the equipment that we typically carry in these SUVs. Just pointing out the reason we are asking for SUVs. These SUVs would be utilized by our supervisors and our traffic officers that carry additional equipment on top of what our regular sedans carry. We did go out and get competitive pricing. There is no state bid pricing for these vehicles. We went out and got 5 bids. The lowest bid actually came from Sutton Ford out of Matson, Illinois. But to keep our business local, we did go approach Rod Baker as well. And Rod Baker, again, to keep our business local, if possible, we are recommending Rod Baker Ford here in Plainfield. It is a higher bid than what Sutton Ford presented to us by $488 per vehicle. But again, to keep our business local, we are asking the board's consideration to purchase 3 Ford utility vehicles through Rod Baker Ford in the amount of $85,389.
Oh, we'll start the way for a motion a second.
Looking for a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second. Chief, a quick point of clarification. If we were to go with the lower bid in the out-of-town vendor, would we have to send a staff member to go pick these vehicles up, transport them, inspect them, and what have you?
It would be the same process we use for Rod Baker. Typically, we can work on an arrangement where the vehicle would be shipped here, but there may be some additional costs. Or we could send a staff member to pick up each vehicle, yes.
Brings us pretty close to the same price then versus just getting from Rod Baker is what it sounds like to me, with overhead expense of, staff going back and forth. Or
Yes, that
delivery.
would be
Okay.
taking time away from whatever else that employee is doing.
What about the backup service? I know Public Works does a lot of the servicing of the police vehicles, but having purchased the vehicles for Rod Baker, do we see the advantages in terms of responsive service when we need something from them?
Public Works is able to handle most of our issues as far as tire changes, oil changes, some things beyond that. But when we do have a problem with one of our patrol vehicles that is beyond the scope of what Public Works provides, Rod Baker and the other vendors we use are usually very receptive to assisting us. And based on the fact that it is a Ford, we would not, if we have a problem with this vehicle, we would not take it all the way back to Matson if that's the case. If Sutton was awarded, we would take it to Rod Baker for service.
Thank you.
I'd like to point out, too, if we do a quick division, I think it's only $454 a unit difference. So, and we're getting a local for service and such, so.
So I guess I'll add, because I don't maybe fully understand the bid process, so I'm thinking if somebody's watching or listening, they're gonna say, well, why not just go back and negotiate the $400 from the local dealer?
We attempted that, sir, and they can't go any lower.
Thank you. Is this gonna be a replacement, or is this in addition to the current fleet?
This will be replacements for vehicles that are getting up in age. Now, I will clarify, what we try to do with those vehicles, since they won't be frontline vehicles, we do try to hand them down to either PEMA, CSOs, or something like that. So depending on the mileage and any mechanical problems, we may move them down to areas where they don't get everyday usage. But if they are having major mechanical problems, then we would send them to the auction. But we do try to get additional service out of the vehicles we would be replacing. It's just they're not being driven every day and every shift like that.
And I know when we did the budget, there was, I believe, line items for capital expenditures, which I'm assuming that this falls under. This is 3 of them. Do you remember how many you had planned for the total for this year for new vehicles for your fleet?
I believe it was, for SUVs, it was 3. We have, in a couple more bullet points, we do have another vehicle we're requesting, but it was 3 SUVs.
Thank you.
Trustee O'Rourke, just for clarification, for the bids, once they put a bid out there, you can choose a different one, based on different criteria. But if you go back, you're going to have to allow everyone to rebid. Like, you couldn't go back and start negotiating between the two if it's an actual legal bid. So whatever those prices come in, you don't necessarily have to take the lowest one, but you can't go back and say, okay, we just got this one that's $300 lower and you're in town, we'll take it, because then you have to allow everybody the opportunity to revisit the bid.
Thanks for the clarification.
I have a motion and a second. If there are any other questions? Seeing none, Trustee O'Rourke,
Yes.
Trustee Peck,
Yes.
Trustee Rassich,
Yes.
Trustee Benucci,
Yes.
Trustee Lamb.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. The second item I have is seeking board's consideration for the purchase of the lighting equipment for the 3 vehicles that were just approved. Again, we went out and got bids from 3 different vendors, and the lowest bid was from Fleet Safety Supply in the amount of $21,569.10. So I would be seeking board's consideration to authorize the purchase from Fleet Safety Supply for that amount.
Looking
So
for
moved.
Second.
I do have a question for you, though, Chief. On these units, since they are quite different, people are not used to seeing utility vehicles stopping them. Are you putting additional emergency lighting on these so it does more or less indicate a emergency unit?
It'll be the same type of lighting that we have on our sedans. And really, in retrospect, the SUVs ride higher, so they're actually more visible to people when we're behind them than some of our sedans, especially if someone's driving a pickup truck that we're trying to pull over, or a semi-truck or something like that. So the SUVs are actually a little bit more visible than the sedans are to the public.
Because I've seen units from New Lenox and Shorewood that are lit up. I mean, when they light them up, it goes off, and there's no doubt that it's a.
I can assure you, the lights we put on our vehicles, you can see well over a mile away.
All right, because I don't want people to be running into these units either, so.
I don't want that either.
Okay. Just wondering.
I have a motion and a second.
Well, yeah,
Thought you had another question.
I do. Quick one. We've been buying these things from Fleet Safety Supply pretty steadily, haven't we?
They've been one of our regular vendors, yes.
The major one, I seem to have seen it several times before. I think we've approved it. I'm just looking for consistency. They have a good track record with us, that sort of thing, so.
They provide timely assistance when we need it. They work with us when we are seeking bids, things like that. And when we make the purchases, when we get approval for the purchases, they're very quick for turnaround as far as us getting the equipment back.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion and a second. If there are no other questions, Trustee O'Rourke,
Yes.
Trustee Peck,
Yes.
Trustee Rassich,
Yes.
Trustee Benucci,
Yes.
Trustee Lamb.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. The next item I have is the police motorcycle lease agreement. I am seeking permission, or I'm seeking consideration from the board to enter into a one-year lease agreement with Woodstock Harley-Davidson for the lease of 2 motorcycles, the registration, and the dealer-installed equipment not to exceed $7,330. The motorcycle program is something we've had in place since 2001. We actually still have 4 officers that are certified as motorcycle officers. However, 2 of those officers are now in administrative positions where they wouldn't be utilizing the bikes on a regular basis. Hence the reason why we're dropping down to 2. We still have 2 certified officers that are in either our patrol or traffic division that would be utilizing them on a regular basis. It is, as I mentioned, we've been involved with this program for 15 years, and we've had a large investment, over $50,000 into it over those years, as far as the training the officers have gone to, the continuing training, and the motorcycles themselves. But we are dropping down to 2. We utilize the motorcycles mainly through the good spring, summer, and good fall months to help with assist with our traffic enforcement. We use them extensively during special events such as our 4th of July fireworks, during Plainfield Fest, during our cruise nights we have them out, things like that. So they are a very visible tool, and I can tell you we get outstanding PR from the kids and the families when the officers are out there for either special events or just driving around. We get outstanding public relations back from our residents and the public as far as the use of the motorcycles. So I would be seeking board's consideration for a motion to approve a one-year lease agreement with Woodstock Harley-Davidson for a lease of 2 motorcycles not to exceed $7,330.
Looking for a motion and a second?
So moved.
Looking for a second?
Second.
Question, Chief. 2 months ago, we approved a 2-month extension of a lease because the people we were dealing with are going out of business. How does this lease compare to what we had been getting before?
That's correct. The extension a couple months ago was because we used to do business with Starved Rock Harley-Davidson, and they were getting out of the program. In that 2-month period is when we did the research, and we went back to Woodstock Harley-Davidson, who we actually had was one when we started the program back up. That was actually our first vendor. The savings was lower than what we had anticipated by changing from Starved Rock to Woodstock Harley-Davidson. So, and it's still well within our budget, especially the fact that we're only going with 2 motorcycles from here on.
Thank you.
Chief, a quick question. So you mentioned the public relations value of the motorcycle program. Are there any other tactical advantages of having, or any other strategic advantages of having this program in place that allow us to respond to accidents differently or handle traffic differently, enforce traffic laws? Are there other advantages other than the public relations side of it?
Oh, absolutely. As I mentioned, we use them extensively during our special events, Plainfield Fest and the Patriotic Picnic and fireworks. And for anybody that's attended specifically the fireworks, you know at the end of the fireworks, it gets gridlocked around the area where they have it around the high school. And unfortunately, in many instances, we've had traffic crashes occur because of that gridlock. And our motorcycle officers are able to get through to get to those crashes and get them moved off the roadway so we can get traffic flowing again. But aside from that, on an everyday basis, they are a valuable tool as far as traffic enforcement, whereas the Mark sedans are a little bit harder to hide, if you will, to do some speed enforcement, things like that. Most people aren't looking for the motorcycles out there, so they can pretty much set up anywhere and do their speed enforcement on our high traffic complaint areas. So they are very useful in those strategic situations, and also just on an everyday basis because of the amount of traffic, and especially because of the construction that we have going on in town. If we have even a minor crash in any one of those areas, most specifically along Route 30 right now, if we have a minor crash anywhere, it could really screw up traffic, and having the motorcycles available would allow us to get through that traffic and hopefully get those vehicles off the road a little bit quicker to open up traffic again.
Mayor Collins. I'd like to speak specifically to this particular motion and second. I know it's a minimum amount, $7,330, but I have to say a couple things. Number one, I view motorcycles in police as having a very negative image on policing. I think, as perhaps in my estimation, as a resident of this community, if we were thinking about police having, being somewhat invisible, all I see is a motorcycle officer behind a billboard, or see him in some particular situation where he's hidden. I really find it as a very negative image. Secondly, I find motorcycles as being a safety factor for the operator. Perhaps there's never been an accident with one of our officers, but I don't want one to happen in the future. I don't view motorcycles as being a safe factor. Many people use them and operate them, and they say that my warnings have no ground. But I think if we have a public employee on a motorcycle, I think we're endangering that individual's life. And thirdly, I find them to have limited use in our community. Number one, the weather here is not cooperative. We use it only on a seasonal basis when the pavement is dry. And those are three reasons I think I will vote no on this particular motion. Thank you.
I have a question. Chief, you had mentioned that there were 4 officers that were qualified through the different training and everything, and 2 of those have moved to different positions where they're not utilizing the resources, the current 2 bikes that you have, correct?
They can still, since they're certified, they can still utilize them for special events, but on a regular basis, they would not be utilizing them, no.
Well, that's where I was. So before you had 4 officers, 2 bikes. Now you got basically 2 officers. I guess the question comes back: do you need 2 bikes, or would one be enough? In other words, are they overlapping schedules where one could use it in one shift and one could use it, or are they both on the same shift that would require the 2 bikes, or would one suffice?
They typically work on the same shifts, and again, if we're utilizing for special events, they may be working those events at the same time, so we could potentially have 2 motorcycles on at a time. And the fact that we have 4 certified officers, as I mentioned, if we have a special event in town, we can still utilize those those officers that are administrative positions to utilize that other motorcycle. So we still have the potential of having 4 officers out there with 2 motorcycles.
And Commander Greco's comments that he included, the cost is 36 something, but he says on average cost was 14,000 per year. So is there going to be that much cost added to this, or are you saving that much with the new lease?
We'll be saving that much.
Okay. And then you said they can do speed enforcement, so they have radar capability?
They actually have a handheld radar holster right attached to their motorcycle that they can do right there, yes.
Lastly, I guess regarding the other trustees' concerns about safety, do we require the officers to have a helmet or wear a helmet when they're on these, or?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Legal clarification for Brian and/or for Jim. Is there anything in the collective bargaining contract that precludes us from eliminating this program or not?
It's not written into the collective bargaining agreement. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I'll have a motion and a second. Trustee O'Rourke?
Yes.
Trustee Peck?
Yes.
Trustee Rassich? Trustee Beducci?
Yes.
Trustee Lamb?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And the last item I have, I'm sorry, not the last item, but the next item I have is seeking the board's approval to purchase 1 Ford Taurus sedan from Rod Baker Ford in the amount of $18,118. This vehicle would be used within our detective division, our investigator division, as one of their squad cars. Again, we went out and got 3 bids from 3 different vendors. This is available under a state bid. We did contact that business for their state bid, and we also contacted our local vendor, that being Rod Baker Ford. Rod Baker Ford did come in $133 over our lowest bid, which was a third vendor. But being a local business, we would like to try to keep our business local. So I would seek board's consideration for a motion to authorize the purchase of 1 Ford Taurus sedan from Rod Baker Ford in the amount of $18,118.
Moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. If there are no questions, Trustee O'Rourke?
Yes.
Trustee Peck?
Yes.
Trustee Rassich?
Yes.
Trustee Benucci?
Yes.
Trustee Lamb?
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you. And the last item I have is the Plainfield Emergency Management Report for February, March, and April of this year. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I'll just repeat the comment I made at the beginning. The training those 3 months is a little over 40, almost 42%, which is an excellent way to keep the skills up. So I applaud you for keeping enthusiasm up for training, and I think it's probably good for the morale as well. So
Thank you.
Attorney's report,
No report this evening, thank you.
reminders.
June 7th, there will be the Planning Commission. June 8th will be coffee with the mayor. June 9th is Historic Preservation. The 13th will be our next committee of the whole, and our next village board meeting will be June 20th.
And as well, the car show begins this Tuesday, tomorrow. Be our first car show. We're seeking a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. We stand in adjournment.